With one motion, Sarah Shelter pulled her apron over her head. The garment smelled of fresh baked bread, ham, and onions from the French onion soup she'd put on to simmer before leaving the West Kootenai craft and grocery. Her English friend told her once that the way to a man's heart was through his stomach. If that were the case, Sarah should have been married off years ago. She'd cooked for plenty of Amish bachelors, every year befriending the 30 or so men who came to Montana for a season. Problem was, their eyes were more on the wild game that filled the hills than on finding a wife. Typically, girls waiting back home had already captured their hearts. The bachelors appreciated Sarah, all right, to fill their stomachs until their western adventure came to an end, and they returned to their farms, their families, and their waiting brides. Tossing the apron into a wicker basket filled with tomorrow's wash, Sarah moved to her bedroom window and opened it. Warm afternoon air that smelled of sunshine and pine wafted in. She paused, staring up at the trees and the green pasture beyond, but mostly at the large mountain that rose in the distance. Eve Peachy had come into the store earlier to tell Sarah they'd been invited to hike Robinson Mountain. Sarah had laughed, thinking it was a joke, until Eve announced it was a bachelor who'd planned the outing. "Amos is planning it yet," Eve had mentioned with a twinkle of her eye. Though not the most handsome bachelor, Amos had an outgoing, playful side. Eve knew if anyone could get Sarah to put on hiking boots to climb a mountain, it would be Amos. Sarah placed a hand over her heart, which danced a double beat at the mere mention of Amos's name, and smiled. She supposed it was time to hike the mountain. Her older brothers had both hiked it. Even her father and mother had. Spring had brought plenty of sunshine and had already cleared the snow from the mountain trails. She had no excuse, really. And maybe she'd even get a chance to get to know Amos a bit better. She removed her cup, placing it on her bed. She'd bathe early and spend the evening quilting on the porch. She never liked the sticky feeling that spending all morning baking at the store brought about. More than that, if one of the bachelors happened to stop for a visit, she'd look proper. Sarah moved to her dresser and stopped short. 2 large jars, previously used for pickles, sat there, filled with all types of curious things, pretty rocks, old pennies, a rusty nail, and a hand-carved whistle, each with a memory attached. But the 3rd jar... She rested a hand on her hip. Its contents had been spilled out, and the jar itself was gone. She picked up the white rock that had been dumped with the other items and fingered it. Then she set it back down. She balled her fist. A rush of anger tightened her shoulders. How could someone treat her things so carelessly? Stomping out her bedroom door through the living room, Sarah let out a shout. "Andy?" Hearing his name, her 12-year-old brother rose from where he'd been sitting on the front porch and darted into the woods. Through the open front door, Sarah spotted what she'd been looking for. Her jar. It sat there covered with what looked like tinfoil, and... Sarah stepped forward. A snake was inside. Her brother had dumped out her things to keep an ugly old brown garter snake? She picked up the jar, crumpled the foil, and slipped her hand inside the jar. "Well, I'll be—" The man's voice caused Sarah to start, and she nearly dropped the jar. There, striding up the wooded path leading from the road, was Amos Byler, with another of the bachelors by his side. Sarah looked at the jar in her hand and, with a quick grip of her fingers and a flip of her wrist, tossed the snake into the yard. It bounced slightly and then slithered away into the tall grass. The 2 men stood staring. Amos ran a hand down his smooth face. Then she remembered. My cup! Sarah placed a hand on top of her head. The silkiness of her blonde hair felt foreign. Since a small girl, she'd worn a cap by day and a sleeping kerchief at night. "I was about to change," she explained, "and then I noticed my memory jar was missing." Amos cocked an eyebrow as he nodded, a hint of a smile spread on the other man's face. "My dad's not here if that's who you're looking for, and I best get inside."